Welcome, everyone, to this Community Spotlight. This series highlights intentional communities around the world, how they live, what they've learned, and how others can connect. And today I'm dialing in from Tamara. This is an intentional community in Portugal that was founded 30 years ago, but I'm speaking with someone completely different. Today, we're exploring traditional Dream Factory, which is also known as TDF. It's a 5-hectare regenerative playground in southern Portugal and the first prototype of the OASA network, which aims to steward 100,000 hectares of land globally. TDF blends co-living, ecological restoration, and decentralized tech into a living lab for regenerative culture. Everyone on the land agrees to follow shared principles of care and stewardship, rethinking ownership, governance, and our relationship with the planet. So our guest today is Sam Delesque, founder of TDF and a visionary behind this ambitious experiment. So Sam, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, and great to see you again. And great that we
Yeah.
can be connecting from pretty close, even though I'm in Lisbon
Yes.
today. TDF is just like 40 minutes from Tamara, so we do have a few
Yes.
connections.
Amazing. Can't wait to visit you soon for one of your events. We'll talk about that later. Sam, to start, what first inspired you to create TDF and what vision were you holding at the beginning?
Yeah, so I've been on this journey of creating this network of technology-powered regenerative villages since quite a while, like since about 8 years. Um, Back when I got started on the idea, I was living in New York, but kind of slowly transitioning to be a full-time digital nomad. And this is all also where we met back in those days.
Yeah.
And so back then, I had the freedom to be able to live and work wherever I wanted to. But as I was traveling around the world, I wasn't really finding what I wanted in terms of connection and intentionality and in terms of ecological practices. And so I started already voicing those ideas. I think you might have even been more than 8 years ago, but was this desire of creating spaces that actually leave a positive trace on nature and that flip the model of real estate development on its head from a degenerative industry and moving that into an regenerative one.
Amazing. Yes, it's an interesting transition from digital nomadism to here. So I'm actually, maybe later we have some time to talk about that and how that was for you. But first, let's talk a little bit more about 2DF so people have like a general idea about how big it is, and yeah, how it is to live on TDF in TDF or spend time at TDF. So just to get an idea, how many people live permanently at TDF? And how many visitors do you have on average in the next couple of months to come or in your top
Mhm.
months, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so TDF is it's a little bit different from your traditional intentional community, coming from this background of digital nomadism, but we're also kind of intersecting different cultures, like we have Burning Man culture mixing together with like crypto and technologists, mixing together with regenerators and land stewards. So it's kind of a convergence of worlds. And so TDF is not like a fixed permanent community, but it's rather an array of different ways to come and play. And so we have everything from people that just show up coming for a few days as guests to people that come for a few weeks as volunteers, to people that come for a few months as residents,
Hmm.
and to people that live full time and that basically live on the land. So right now, I think we have about 7 team members who are basically full time on the ground. Plus, there's currently one family with 2 kids, 2 and 3, living full time on the land as well. But then we have maybe 5, 6 people who are there for a few months. We have a stewardship program, which is an educational program for people that want to get more involved in building regenerative villages or operating regenerative villages. So we have 3 stewards right now who are there for 12 weeks. Some of them might be extending and staying longer, and then we also have a few resident builders who are helping us build our mushroom farm that we're setting up currently, and different kind of build projects around the land.
Mm-hmm.
and those residents for a few months. So generally we have about 15, 20 people on the ground, and then with events up to 100 people. And yeah, we have quite a lot of turnaround. Like we had about 3,000 people visit the project over the last 4 years.
Mm.
Um, but the idea and the model is to have repeating customers, let's say. So we have
Mm-hmm.
a token model where every token gives you one night stay per year. So the idea is that our citizens, the members who are kind of the core of the governance of the project, um, this is designed to have about like 300 members who hold like 30 to 90 tokens, which mean that they basically come for a few months every year. So it's about like building recurring a recurring relationship with a place and coming back every year and continuing to connect with a place. So um, at most moments when you come to TDF, you will meet a few of those citizens who are definitely not there full time, but who come back every now and then, and like kind of always somewhat integrated into the project. So yeah, those are kind of the different categories and the sizes. But then in terms of the actual land itself, it's actually two properties. So it's one old chicken farm with 1,500 square meters of existing buildings that we're upcycling into a fancy co-living space with event space, co-working areas, an industrial kitchen, and maker space, workspace, natural pool, mushroom farm, and all of these kind of things kind of converging in one place. And this is really like the heart of the project. This is where people will be coming and going. It's where the reception is and so on. But basically, we're building out from there with the second property, which is actually 25 hectares, of which we are already using 5 hectares right now. And so on these 5 hectares, we have more like, let's say, experiential camping, and actually when going through the process now of getting the licensing for the second part of the land. And so this is a much bigger development because here we're actually intending to build a tiny house neighborhood with 10 to 20 tiny houses
Mm.
alongside a full-size uh, co-housing development with about also like 10 to 20 full-size homes. We have an entire street of urban land that we can develop. So in the future, you will have the permanent residents, as in the more co-housing type families or
Mm.
intergenerational living kind of situation, mixed with a more short-term and transient living, which is going to be the
Mm.
current place with the co-living development. So the idea is to have about 100 people being able to live there with always like a flux of people coming in and leaving. So we keep the
Mm-hmm.
energy moving, we keep it fluid, and we enable a more broad range of people to
Mm-hmm.
be able to access these kind of spaces.
Do you have any aspirations as to like how many of those 100 will be permanent and how many would be transient?
Um, I mean, like I said, it's going to be about 10 to 20 tiny houses plus 10 to
Okay.
20 full-size homes. So
Right.
that's probably going to be about 50, 60 people
With families
um,
and kids and whatnot.
with
Okay.
families and everything
Mm.
else. And then there would probably be about 30 people in the 30 to 40 people in the more temporary area. But then,
Mm.
of course, in the temporary area, we might as well host events with like 100 or maybe eventually with like up to 200 people. So it'll be fluctuating as well, depending on the
Mm-hmm.
season and time of the year and so on. But that's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
general idea.
Mm-hmm. So currently, you did say a little bit about that it's a bit of a combination of Burning Man people, tech people. What can you give a bit of an idea what type of people you tend to find at TDF at the moment?
Yeah, so um, I guess our word of mouth engine is going quite strong since a long time, and yeah, like I said, it's like the Burning Man community. I mean, we're like a lot of the initial founding team kind of has this background, and this is the ways that we structured ourselves, especially initially when there was no infrastructure. So it was kind
Mm-hmm.
of set up as like running a Burning Man camp, and we like to host parties, we like to attend burns. So this is really like one of the core culture, which is really anchored around this idea of co-creation. I think that's really like the strong point behind Burning Man. And so this is really something that we encourage. Like we are on the ground, we kind of operate as a duocracy and we empower people to actually do the things they love doing. And I think everyone that comes to TDF feels that and they feel encouraged to actually just do things, like whether it's building or participating in the gardening or the cooking and so on. So it's kind of bring that co-creation together. But then we
Mm.
also, of course, like attract people from more like science or tech world. So we have people coming from like the crypto space. We're the first regenerative village that's actually using crypto in the world, like the only place where you
Mm.
can buy a token and actually get access to real assets through it.
Mhm.
So that does attract certain people who are interested in more economic and technological innovation side of it. Also, people from like the network state kind of groups, like kind of
Mhm.
starting to envision what could the future of humanity coordination look like. So you get the big thinkers, you get the doers, you get the technologists, and then we'll of course also get the people who just care about the land and
Mm.
the people that you might more likely see in eco villages and these type of places. So people who really care about building um, natural systems that can feed humans and that
Mm.
can restore nature. So
Mhm.
that's kind of the main pillars of the project.
Right. And like kind of like an overlapping, blending group is the digital nomads who just want to spend more time in nature and want to live life a bit outside of the city, but still with inspiring people. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this identity of digital nomad has, I would say, almost like collapsed over the last few years because all of a sudden with COVID, everyone
Everyone's a
became a
nomad.
digital
Mm.
nomad. So I don't think there's still definitely like some people who identify as such, but I
Mm.
think the general concept is something that's like becoming more and more broad and that just
Mhm.
applies to more and more people. So I think some of the people that I mentioned might consider themselves digital nomads. I think
Mhm.
many others wouldn't.
Mhm.
They would maybe label it differently. But yeah, I mean, because we do have access to like co-working and we have
Mm.
internet and this kind of things, that does facilitate people that maybe have online businesses or that
Of
are maybe
course.
working for some corporation or whatever to still be
Mm.
part of it. And this is something that we welcome. Like we don't want to be like no, like you have to be 100% just like focused on nature and like just on
Mm.
this. We want to like enable a more broad range of people to be part of these
Sure.
kind of regenerative projects.
Yeah, and to overlap with each other. Yeah, that's amazing. And can you tell me a bit more about how you care? Like, how does it work with your electricity, your water, your food, etc.? And I know you're still obviously a pretty young community, but where are you now, or what are you aspiring to be as a regenerative village?
Yeah, so I mean, our well, one of our goals is to, of course, be like to some level like self-sufficient. But we kind of apply more cosmo-local values to producing goods and to integrating to the global economy. So the goal is not to be this secluded bubble that doesn't interact with the
Mm-hmm.
global economy and all of this. It's
Mm-hmm.
rather to how can we localize the things that make sense to localize so that we can
Mm-hmm.
optimize for resource consumption and these kind of things. So it's more looking at it from a permacultural lens of
Mm.
looking at how can we actually cut those external resources that we are bringing in, because those resources that we take from the outside and that cities tend to do, like we just bring all these things from the outside and we don't even realize what impact we have on the environment
Mm-hmm.
because we're just
Yeah.
living in this kind of bubble consuming these seemingly abundant resources. But they must come from somewhere. So when you start to look a bit deeper at where those things come from, well, the goal for us is to close the loop. And so, yeah,
Mm.
there's a lot of things that you can do and that actually start to enhance each other. And like the more we're looking at systems that we want to add to CDF, the more we find out that they can actually play really, really well together, and
Mm.
they can actually give us access to so many things that maybe people judge or have like a bad opinion about, including things
Mm-hmm.
like AI or crypto or things like that that people
Mm-hmm.
say have like big environmental consequences. But when you start to relocalize these things, you can actually see that no, you can actually build uh, coherent whole systems that
Mm.
integrate all those different pieces. So, for example, we have solar production. Um, that's quite an obvious one. I
Mm-hmm.
think most of the electrical production of the world will be using solar pretty soon. By
Mm-hmm.
2027, I think it's going to be the leading power source in the world. Um, but so this is one example. But then, for example, we're also looking at producing biochar. So we're looking at not just producing biochar for agricultural need, but actually like integrating this system into the whole system of the project. So when you produce biochar, you have to produce a lot of energy, so you're producing a lot of heat. So this heat can actually be sufficient in our case to heat up our entire buildings.
Mm.
So all of a sudden we can cut off all of the resources that we need to heat up the buildings, and then we're producing biochar, which is a great soil additive, especially for arid regions like Portugal. It can increase the water retention capacity of the soil by
Mm.
30%, and it can increase by a lot the surface available for microbiological life to thrive in the ground. And simultaneously, you're actually capturing carbon from the atmosphere and storing it for a millennia into the ground. And then when you start to plug those systems together, you can actually make like super efficient systems. So, for example, we're also looking at adding a mushroom farm. The mushroom farm
Mm.
take as inputs, well, heating and cooling. It takes substrate that you need to sterilize for 24 hours, and
Mm.
in order to do that, you need a lot of heat. So again, something that
Mm-hmm.
the biochar can help with. And the output of the mushroom farm is a lot of compost. All of the substrate, once it has grown the mushrooms, it becomes compost, can be fed into the garden, and so on. So it's like
Mm.
looking at all of the systems not as individual pieces, but as part of a broader ecosystem.
Mm.
And we like to throw in like more advanced technologies there as well, because I think the future needs to include technology. We can't just ignore it. And so,
Mm-hmm.
for example, we're also building a data center which is directly connected to a mushroom farm. The data center can be a
Wow.
source of heat again, and it can be a
Mm.
source to convert solar power into compute, into money, into financial resources, for example.
Very clever.
Yeah, those are just like some examples, but I'd say
Nice.
some of the main things that we've been implementing this year is water systems. So we built our first lake, we built our first biopool.
Mm.
The biopool is about 500 cubic meters of
Mm.
water storage, so it's quite significant.
Nice.
And this lake and this pool are getting fed by a series of swales that we dug on the land. So this is how we can actually harvest pretty much all of the excess rainwater that lands on the whole 5 hectares that we're currently stewarding. We also added an additional water tank on top of the land. So yeah, water is kind of the first priority for us, and I think in general for Portugal. So that's what we've been working on. But yeah, we're also in the process of building out a mushroom farm. We're going to be adding a
Mm.
lot more solar capacity soon, the server farm,
Mm.
the biogas production. Um, we're going to be adding biogas facilities as well, so
Nice.
to be turning all of our black water into energy as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are some systems that we're looking
And
at.
you have a little garden as well. Is that already providing some food for you guys?
Oh yeah, I didn't even mention the food part. So yeah, obviously food is a big topic. So the way that we see it is we want to build food systems that also restore the soil, that also support
Mm.
biodiversity in the process. So we work primarily with syntropic agroforestry. So that means growing food in a forest. So we have a food forest, which is about zero point 0.4 hectares, plus like a reforestation project of about half a hectare. So over 4,000 trees planted so
Wow.
far. And this is a lot of more native trees and trees that are here to produce a lot of biomass that can feed back into the ground. But
Mm-hmm.
in between all of that, of course, there's like production capacity to create food. So in the food forest, we have a bunch of different fruit trees. You also have some perennial veggies and things like that growing in between. And yeah, and then we have a market garden, which we set up a couple of years ago, which when it's in full swing can produce food for about 30 people. So this is
Mm.
to kind
Wow.
of supply our own vegetable need.
Mm-hmm.
And this year we also integrated that really strongly with our chicken farm. We have like
Yes.
12 chicken or something like that currently. We're waiting a
Nice.
few more. And those chicken are really an integral part of creating the compost that can then
Mm-hmm.
go to feed the garden. And the garden also has perennial, well, it has trees inside as well to provide shade and to provide
Mm-hmm.
biomass to feed the ground again. Yeah,
Mm.
and soon we're going to be adding the mushroom farm, and the next big kind of agricultural project is going to be to set up like a commercial orchard. That's going to be
Mm.
part of the rest of the 25 hectares. It's going to be about
Mm.
5 hectares of um, more professionally geared and more production oriented forestry, and it's going to be with a main focus on almonds and olives and
Wow.
things that we can produce in bigger quantities in order to have products that we can actually export from the village.
Wow, interesting. But still under permaculture ideas or um yeah, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everything that we do, the goal is to restore the soil, provide more
Mm.
space for biodiversity to thrive. So
Mm-hmm.
the commercial orchard is designed to have a high production, like it's going to have a high density of those productive trees that we want. But of course, it's going to be in between
Mixed with
a lot of support
other.
species and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of the things that we are kind of optimizing for or kind of playing with is that we see the agricultural landscape shifting rapidly. It's
Mm.
not just like an edge, like it's not just like a hippie dream to build
Mm.
regenerative farms. Even Nestle has commitments to have
Wow.
50% of regenerative production by 2030. So the world is really shifting in that way, and the advancement in robotics are especially huge in terms of agriculture. And so
Mm.
I think things like agroforestry systems can not only become a great way to do it, it's going to become the norm because agroforestry systems are much more resilient to things like climate change. So if you want to
Mm-hmm.
keep feeding populations as the climate is deteriorating around the world, agroforestry systems are definitely going to play a huge part in it.
Wow. Yeah, cool to hear. Can you just these are beautiful explanations and ideas and things that you've built over time, but can you just to um give us a more of a practical idea of what it's like at TDF? Could you bring us through a typical day at TDF? Like from when you wake up to what happens throughout the day, through what spaces you have and maybe do different things in, to how
Hmm.
the evening tends to end, or maybe weave in some rituals that you may have on a daily or weekly basis.
Yeah, for sure. So we have like quite a structured day. A lot of people tell us that we're quite organized as a community. And that's just because like over like 4 years of running it, like we kind of found our rhythm and the ways that kind of works for us. So we tend to concentrate like the more manual work in the morning. So from 9 to 1, volunteers, residents, and team all build together.
Mm.
And so we start the day with breakfast at around 8:30 until 9, and then
Someone makes that, right? Like a volunteer makes that, or
yeah, so all the meals are co-created,
mm.
except when we have events that we might have like a kitchen lead kind of running the kitchen.
Mm.
But yeah, all the meals are co-created. So when you live at TDF, you basically sign up for 2, 3 shifts per week, where you're responsible for creating the meal experience and cleaning and just kind of managing the kitchen.
Mm.
So that's also very much like you would operate in a Burning Man camp or something like that, or at
Mm-hmm.
least the Burning Man camps that I've been a part
You've
of.
been to, yeah.
And so yeah, so someone is cooking the breakfast, a team of 2, 3 people generally. We get together and we're serving the breakfast in our new nursery cafe, which we also built
Mm.
out this year. So you're eating amongst all of the little seedling trees that we're growing,
Beautiful.
and we have a fancy coffee machine because one of the things that we were missing living out on the countryside was some fancy flat whites and these kind of things. So
Mm.
so that is definitely also part of the morning culture to have a nice coffee sitting in
Wow.
the sun. And then at 9 we get together for our morning stand up. So this is a place where we get together in a circle, we do some stretches together, we get to know each other's names, how we're feeling, and we get started with the more practical things of like forming the teams for the day, seeing what the needs are, dispatching the volunteers to the across the different teams. So our main teams is build and land, and then we have a space team slash sometimes kitchen, and a meta team, which is more like around content production and digital things. So
Mm.
generally, volunteers get dispatched either to build or to land. And yeah, and then we spend the morning working together. On Wednesdays, we have all hands on deck into one specific field. So yesterday, for example, it was our all hands on garden day. So everyone was
Mm.
working on the garden together and cutting the weeds in the reforestation, these kind of things. Um, yeah, and then for lunch, we get together again. Someone is making the lunch for everyone, and then in the afternoon, volunteers are free to do what they want. Some volunteers have like part-time jobs or have to do some digital work or other things, and then the residents kind of go more into the a bit deeper flow with like their whatever they're working on, as well as a team.
And there is
So
a
the
co-working
afternoon,
space there, right? With
exactly.
Starlink.
There's a co-working space, like cafes with different spaces you can work from, and you can also just go and enjoy the land. Yeah, and then in the evening, again, I guess we get together around 7 for dinners. And yeah, I'd say the food experience is quite unique at TDF. Like people really like to create something nice. It's
Mm,
not just like rice and beans. It's like you're actually gonna have like full-on culinary experiences and yeah, kind of getting to see who lives there, like through the cooking as well.
mm,
And we optimize for that by having a very nice kitchen where it's really easy to cook meals for a lot of people, and people just love getting creative in there. And we always have a lot of nice ingredients, so you can get into the creative flow.
mm,
And yeah, and then we have a few like weekly rituals. Like on Sundays, we have our sauna, and then we have our um, community sharings on Tuesday, and then we have a few other kind of rituals spread throughout the week or the months.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I think generally in the weekends, people tend to do more their own things, maybe go to the beach or other things. And then, yeah, often tend to hang out in the sauna or other places like that together.
Amazing, beautiful. I've been for 3 days and have experienced the fantastic food, and it was nice to see how you organize things and yeah, the different spaces you have for everything. So, yeah, definitely enjoyed that experience that you just described as well. Also, the sauna. We're starting to run a little bit out of time, so I have to be very careful with which questions I choose to ask you because I still have so many. But I want to talk a little bit about the governance. Maybe we could keep that relatively short, and then I want to go into the crypto stuff that you're doing, especially because it's so unique. But maybe it's maybe hard to explain, but could you tell us how decisions are made within the TDF ecosystem? Or maybe it's related to the crypto layer that you have. What is the process and yeah, how is it structured?
Yeah, for sure. So, first of all, I mean, we went through a few iterations with our project, and so um, the current version is kind of the latest, but TDF is a game, and basically we have a transparent governance system where you know when you step into the game, you can see how you can influence it and how you can gain governance power and these kind of things. So the kind of three layers of decision making is a little bit modeled on how democracies are built. So we have our constitutional power. This is the rules that are meant to be immutable. Those are, for example, our regenerative and stewardship principles, which have like pretty stringent principles about how what we can actually do on the land. Like the idea is that when you step into the TDF lands, you abide by the constitutional definition of how we want to live with nature. And so we made that very difficult to change. And this is basically our articles of association based in Switzerland. And so this is regulated under Swiss law. And it's not something that we generally put up for discussion. And so there's a specific process if we need to update those rules, those constitutional
Hmm.
rules about how we manage the land. Then the second layer of power is, which is the more original one, and maybe the one that where we kind of build a model around it and that we want to bring out into the world. And this is basically a little bit making the legislative power. So this is how do we make the big decisions about our day-to-day life, about what the project is doing, how do we live together as humans, kind of the ultimate like legislation of the project. And we do this through a digital protocol, so through a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. And so that means that we can encode the governance decisions and have people participate in those decisions based on their stake in the project. And this stake is represented through the different tokens that we have. So you have the native TDF token that gives you access right to live at TDF,
Hmm. One
which kind
token
of
is one
represents
night,
you.
or?
Exactly. One TDF
Mm,
token is one night spent at TDF
mm,
per year. But then, so this is kind of your, let's say your stake in the project. Like this is how much time you are allowed to spend, and this is a right that you can resell in the future. So this holds like actual value.
hmm.
And so when you work for TDF or when you invest in TDF because you are purchasing the token, this is a way that we basically distribute the value of the project. And so
Hmm.
through this token, you get some governance right. But the two other primitives I'm bringing to the table don't have anything to do with finance. They're based on proof of presence. So that's how much time you actually spend in the place.
Mm,
So we recognize that probably the most valuable asset is time, and everyone has the same amount of time. And so if you choose to spend your time at TDF, then it makes sense that you should have more governance power. And that makes a lot of sense when we are a digital nomad project, and you might have people coming for 1 day in the year, and you might have people living for 365 days in the year. So we want to be able to
mm,
kind of distribute the amount of power that you have based on not only how much stake you have in the project, but also how much time do you actually spend there. And then the third one is proof of sweat. So this is how much work did you actually put in the project? Like, are you getting paid a full-time salary by TDF because you're like full-time employed by the project, or are you just like passing through and lending a hand, or maybe just enjoying your stay? And so this legislative power is basically in charge of making the decisions around what is a master plan, like what are we actually building, what is a map of the land, uh, how do we allocate the different real estate assets to which purposes. This is the legislation, the jurisdiction of the DAO. Um, but then it also decides on what are the rules of the game, how do we participate, how do we make decisions, how do we evolve this project. So these kind of very top level decisions that are
mm,
very important, um, but that you might not also want to debate every day. And it's not really like how we don't really use it for day-to-day operations. So then the third level of power is more the executive power,
mm,
which you also have in countries. And so the executive power in our case is basically run by a team. So we have a team that's employed full time on the ground to be empowered to make the decisions about a specific domain. So if you're the build lead, you'll be making the decision about the build, as long as it fits within the legislative scope, which has determined what we want to build in the different areas of the land. So the idea of the executive power is to basically take the treasury of the project, so the funding that's been collected, and to transform the master plan into a tangible real life vision. And just to add a little bit on that executive power, basically we made it in a way where we're very much operating on like duocratic principles. So we really want to empower the people who are actually doing the thing to have the power to do the thing and to make the decisions regarding to those things. And that I think sets us a little bit apart from a lot of projects because we don't spend hours like sitting in circles and debating like how to do something or why do something and so on. We have a very clear structure for where to make the decisions, and then the people who are actually doing it are empowered to actually make those decisions.
cool. Okay, so actually, you kind of answered a little bit about the crypto question I had, as well as yeah, the decision-making system. So great that those are interlinked. We're almost running out of time, but would you be able to say, I just want to quickly talk about what has been the hardest part about building and living in TDF so far, and if you ever thought of maybe stopping, or what kept you committed to the project. So,
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, building a regenerative village is difficult. Um,
mm,
the failure rates are higher than even in the startup world, and that is because you're not only building a business together, you're also building a life and friendships
mm,
and everything else.
human stuff.
Um, yeah, all the human stuff. That's the difficult part. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, what's been let's say a blocker sometimes, yeah, it's like coordination, like finding the right way to channel like very diverse range of energies into something, into a tangible outcome. And like, how do we actually make those decisions together? Um, and yeah, I think the main thing that holds a lot of project back is financial resources.
Mm.
And so, this is something that we invested a lot of our kind of energy in. Like, how do we actually create those new forms of systems that can align people and capital towards doing the things that we actually want to be doing? Um, but yeah, it's not been without pain. And I came into this project much more nomadic than I am today. So in the process of kind of running this thing, like there's some things that I had to let go of,
Mm.
including being flexible to just live anywhere in the world. And while I came in with this digital nomad perspective, um, at some point I basically decided to step out of the project about 2 years ago. Um, it was basically the moment when we were launching a token. We'd done a lot of the groundwork. I was kind of burned out at the time. I'd done way too much. And so I handed off the project to my peer, and then I just went traveling for a bit, and unfortunately, it didn't really pan out. And what I found out is that the project really needed to be held by someone. And
Mm.
so since then, we kind of shifted the model to, instead of having like very frequent changes in the team, now we have a much more permanent team on the ground who is like actually holding the things that need to be held,
Mm.
and that's very important to keep the continuity in the project. Um, while we can still have this model of having people come and go. But
Mm-hmm.
it is important to have kind of some level of stability in in
Mm-hmm.
in that. But yeah, I mean, in those 3 months when I was actually completely out of the project, it's quite an interesting experiment, letting people just play with it and see what happened.
Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, it was a lack of resources that made that phase kind of end. Um, but yeah, after that, I basically came back into the project, and and since then we've been rebuilding the energy, and now we've been now in a very good flow, basically having a really nice team with a lot of people that kind of see the value of the token that we're creating. And I mean, it's uh, it's a big ask for us. Like, we are asking people to believe in this new form of currency and to completely replace any sense of like real estate. And it's not like small amounts. Like, there's been more than 1 million euros invested in TDF so far,
Mm.
and so it's real assets, and people are putting like real money into this game. So it's a bit more than just like a small crypto experiment. And we're really going fully in. Um, so yeah, I think that's like
Yeah.
one of the main learnings.
I get it. Yeah, no, very interesting to hear. And it's also good for other people who are starting communities. So we're at the end of our talk. Unfortunately, I have so many more questions. Maybe one day we'll do another round of questions. But for now, for those who are curious or who want to visit, want to volunteer, or experience TDF in any other way, what are the programs, residencies, opportunities, events that they can participate, and where can they find out?
Traditionaldreamfactory.com, all the details of how to play are explained. This year we really focused on building, so we are calling in builders who want to come and do a residency, maybe pick up a build project, whether it's creating a tree house or building a hot tub or building a mushroom farm. We're creating all of these things right now. And so skilled workers are super welcome right now. But then we're also calling in families and people that want to take part in TDF in the more long term and who want to maybe be a bit more settled. I think we have quite a bit of the more nomadic type people coming through and like still exploring the place. And now we're at the stage of actually offering a village for more for many
Adult people.
generations to
Nice.
come and
Multi-generational.
adulting. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so yeah, I will post a link of your website, but also your Instagram later in our Telegram group. And is there one last thing that I just want to ask. So, for people dreaming of starting something similar, because I will say, Sam, I know of a lot of, network stake people or even other groups of tech people who are dreaming and talking about this, but they haven't actually succeeded anything yet. You're probably the only one that I know of that is actually doing it. Is there a piece of advice you'd like to offer to these people?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is the perspectives that we enter these projects with is radically different from everything that we have grown to learn and grown to embrace as citizens of this global world. Um, you need to be able to commit for 10 years if you want to make this village a success. And so that's a big ask. But if you can really commit to that, then I'm sure you'll find the resources and the people and whatever else you need. But really, this commitment is really key to the success. And making sure that you have a realistic plan for how you actually acquire the resources and the skills and everything else that you have. And I think very critically is like, how do you decentralize the access to the resources that you're producing? How do you make sure that people feel rewarded and feel engaged and feel like they actually have an ownership in the village that you're creating? Because if you're just
Mm,
creating it and you're the only one that hold the keys to it, people are not going to feel engaged, and at some point it's going to disintegrate and people will
mm.
leave. So make sure that you give people a chance to really own the thing that you're creating and
And
don't hold
co-create
it
with
too
you.
tight. Yeah.
Mm, amazing. Well, this was so good. I want to open, thank you so much for answering all my questions so openly, Sam. I'd love to open up the floor in case anyone is interested in asking any questions. Um, Anyone who can just start their video or just unmute themselves and ask a question. Or if you're shy, it's also okay if you type it in the chat and then I will ask the question to Sam. Don't be shy. There are no silly questions. We have a question from Dusty. Is cryptocurrency used for the internal transactions?
Yeah, so the particularity of our token is that it's a utility token. So that means that when you book a night stay, you actually just stake your TDF token into a contract. And because you lock that token in a contract for a year, this is how we can give you the access to the facilities. So we don't transact crypto in the sense of uh, spending your TDF tokens as a payment, but rather you just stake your TDF token as a form of getting access right to real estate.
So the stays, which would then also include the food, or how do I see this?
So the token is strictly for the access
Got it.
to the facilities. So still need to
Mhm.
pay for food and this kind of things separately.
Got it.
Yeah, we basically
Understood.
separated out the different kind of costs that are associated with living in a
Mm,
house, and essentially your token kind of replaces the cost of renting. So you're not paying rent to any entity or something like that when you have a token. You're simply owning a fractional use of the resource, but you still have to cover for your utility fees, energy, and
mm.
maintenance, and food, and these kind of things.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sam, there might be people who didn't get the opportunity to join the call live, but who will watch the rewatch. Can I tell them that it's okay for them to ask questions afterwards in the This Is Also community chat? Is that okay by you?
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Wow, thank you so much. And I hope to see you soon in TDF. And thank you for your time, and thank you everyone for joining today.
Yeah, please
Wishing
come visit. And
amazing. See you soon. Bye, everyone.
ciao, ciao.